In the little time she was away, her two little girls were playing on the beach and making sandcastles. However, they were nowhere to be found upon her return. The distraught single mother collaborated with the authorities and combed every available area of Australia for 8 long months in a desperate hunt for her missing daughters, but they could not be found. At a distant beach, she was putting up new posters for missing children when a seaplane pilot approached her and claimed to have just flown over and found a really peculiar object on a deserted private island. Unexpectedly, this finding and serendipitous meeting would alter the course of the case. First, tell us where you are watching today so we can begin to bring you this shocking news. Also, hit that subscribe button if you enjoyed the video. Stepping out of the unmarked police vehicle, Alexandra felt the gentle caress of the Australian wind on her face. She looked over at the guy who had escorted her here as she wiped a lock of hair from her eyes. "Hello, Ben." A law enforcement official clad in civilian attire. At this remote beach in Western Australia, his vehicle was parked close to a modest wooden building that doubled as a security lodge and information center. Following this path, Ben directed her toward the structure. This section of beach, in contrast to the busy tourist beaches of Queensland, was quiet and frequented largely by residents of the surrounding town. As she looked around the beach, Alexandra could hardly make out the faces of the tourists. Ben led the way ahead of her, his steps marked by determination. At the security lodge's entrance, he showed the 2 guards stationed outside his badge. They acknowledged their presence with a nod and led them inside. Coastal maps were affixed on corkboards and a radio system hummed softly in one corner, otherwise, the interior was unadorned yet practical. "Hey there, I'm Alex." Ben took her inside and presented her to the 3 city officials. "The woman whose story I told you about, the 2 daughters who went missing, Casey and Chloe's mother." The tallest man in the group gave a serious nod. "We got the reports for the Queensland case a few months ago." With a firm grip on her pocketbook, Alexandra straightened her back. "The disappearance of my girls has persisted for the past 8 months. A look of agony crossed her face, but her speech stayed the same. "They vanished from view at a Queensland beach." With a comforting touch, Ben put his hand on her shoulder. "We have searched every state. We left New South Wales last month and arrived in Perth last week, now we're heading north along Western Australia." An elderly officer, his sunken face bearing the marks of a life lived, leapt forward. "The son. This is Officer Davis. We have been apprised of your case. It's a terrible situation. Over the next few days, we intend to search this area extensively," Ben clarified, maintaining an air of professionalism throughout. "No problem," Officer Davis nodded in agreement. "Alexandra would like permission to post missing children signs around the beach and town," Alexandra said, "Thank you. I'd like to get to the beach before it gets too hot." "Of course, please do whatever you need. I will help in any way I can. I'll remain here with the officers to coordinate our search efforts, if that's okay with you," Ben agreed. He nodded. Thanks to their assurance that they would be in touch throughout the day, Alexandra stepped outside into the morning light. Ben's name rang out to her, and she turned to see him jogging to catch up. "Alexandra," he said, his voice kinder than when he had spoken to the other officers. Alexandra nodded, swallowing, and her shoulders drooped little as she said, "Remember what we discussed earlier. Not easy." The compassion in Ben's eyes spoke the story. "I know, 8 months is a long time." His inability to complete the statement left them with a heavy implied threat. "If we don't find anything here in Western Australia by the end of the month, we'll need to consider other approaches." "Did you say to just quit looking?" The words came out of Alexandra's mouth in a whisper. She was too ashamed to say the term for fear of what you would think. Uncomfortably, Ben moved. "We have traversed every state and pursued every viable lead. Nobody has witnessed those people." In response, Alexandra straightened her back. "Then I need to go. Embrace the time we have to the fullest." Ben went to his vehicle and opened the trunk. He produced a number of wooden stakes, a stack of more leaflets, and laminated posters about the missing children. With a gesture of gratitude, Alexandra accepted the materials. As Ben made his way back to the security lodge, she turned toward the shore, the signs heavy in her hands paled in comparison to the weight in her. She walked along the shoreline with wooden stakes in one hand and posters in the other, her hair whipped by the wind. Every step brought back memories of that solemn occasion 8 months ago, when she and her daughters had scattered her husband David's ashes over the Queensland waters. David had died too young from cancer, leaving Alexandra a widow at 34 years old and 2 young daughters to raise alone. During the emotional ceremony, they remained at the beach, seeking solace in the soothing rhythm of the waves. Alexandra had slipped away to purchase drinks at a cafe by the water, leaving Casey and Chloe to construct a sand castle just 20 yards away. The 5 minutes she had turned her back on them had turned into 8 months of desperate searching. A tear rolled down her cheek, swiftly wiped away by the salty breeze. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, compelled herself to remain in the very moment. Alexandra found a spot where the sand was still dry but visible to beachgoers. She dug a small hole with her hands, carefully driving the wooden stake deep into the sand until it stood firmly, the faces of her daughters visible. "I have to be strong," she whispered to herself. "They're out there somewhere." She refused to believe that they had simply wandered off or drowned. Her girls were too smart and cautious around water. Someone had taken them. Perched on the laminated poster, she could see Casey's gap-toothed smile, a consequence of losing her first tooth weeks before her disappearance, and Chloe's dimples, which would pop up whenever she laughed. The girls were 6 and 5 years old, so innocent and vulnerable. As Alexandra gazed at their photographs and the expansive ocean beyond, she silently prayed to whatever powers might be listening. Ben's words reverberated in her mind, and the police theory was simple. Assuming the girls were still alive after 8 months, someone would have. Alexandra was so engrossed in her thoughts that she failed to see the approaching aircraft. Then she heard a loud buzzing sound, and she looked up to see a seaplane descending toward the water, its pontoons skimming the surface as it made a smooth landing. She glanced around, wondering if she had seen the plane, but there was no sign of any evidence that they had been kidnapped. "I'm sorry," she yelled out as he drew near. "I didn't realize this was a landing location. I was about to grab it when I noticed a man get out of the sea aircraft and start jogging in my direction. It's not your fault whatsoever, I'll relocate the sign." "No, no," the man waved dismissively as he approached her. "This isn't where I normally land." His tan skin, windswept hair, and towering stature betrayed an outdoor lifestyle. "I am Robert." With a hand gesture, he spoke to Martin. Arm in arm, Alexandra shook his hand gingerly, saying, "I saw you placing the sign and recognized the photos from the news." Robert abruptly spoke, betraying his embarrassment. "I'm sorry, but I'm quite busy. I don't have time for I'm not looking for an autograph." He froze, shifting his gaze from Alexandra to the poster and then back again. "I believe I've laid eyes on your girls." A little beat skipped Alexandra's heart. "Excuse me? For what location?" Robert said, "I was swooping over Middle Island, which is not far from here." Pointing toward the faraway sky. "2 girls who appeared to be around your children's age caught my eye when I was at a low elevation. I noticed you here just as I was about to report it to the authorities." "Is that Middle Island?" As her thoughts raced, Alexandra echoed them. "Indeed, it is intended to remain vacant. According to the maps, that island is privately owned. For that reason, the presence of youngsters there struck me as peculiar." Robert went on with a serious look on his face. "On the beach, they were accompanied by 2 males. Even though I couldn't make out their features from where I was in the air, when I recently came across your poster." Her knuckles became white as Alexandra clenched the last piece of wooden stake. "At this very moment, we must contact the authorities." I nodded, "Robert. Either way, I was going that way. No need to fret. The authorities will verify their identity and determine whether they are your daughters." As Alexandra trailed Robert back to the security lodge, where Ben was waiting with the local officers, a glimmer of hope, a weak hope, indeed, flitted in her chest. Ben was in a little structure, so Alexandra and Robert rushed into it, continuing conversations with the police in the area. Upon their entrance, the discussion ceased, and all gaze shifted to them. Ben noticed her red face and quick breathing, so he questioned, "Alexandra?" Robert was acknowledged by Officer Davis, who gave him a nod. "Martin, I didn't anticipate seeing you today," Martin stated with a hint of surprise. "I have something to report," Roger added plainly. Ben straightened up, captivated. As the pilot explained, "I was flying over Middle Island about an hour ago and saw two young girls with a few men on the beach, located in the middle of the island. Certainly not occupied. A private island, as Officer Davis clarified. Belongs to a class of very rich people. Once in a while, they stop by." Then Roger looked across at Alexandra. "Upon seeing you on the beach holding the missing poster, it dawned on me that the girls I had seen resembled your daughters. Are you absolutely sure about this?" Ben inquired, maintaining a measured yet urgent tone. Robert uttered a small scoff. "I am not certain." Effortlessly, I sped past. Missed seeing their faces clearly. At the computer terminal, Officer Davis entered some text. "This may be possible." He speculated, drumming his fingers on the keyboard, that they could easily be the island owner's offspring. "Permit me to examine our database." With an unsure but resolute voice, Alexandra took a step forward. "If you think there's even a remote possibility, please look into it for me." The room was electric with tension as Officer Davis flipped through displays, and Ben reassured her, "We understand." Despite his neutral demeanor, Alexandra couldn't help but scan Ben's face for any indication that this might be the case. "Here we go," Officer Davis finally said. "Middle Island is jointly owned by several wealthy individuals from Perth and Sydney. Our records show that at least 3 of them have young daughters between the ages of 4 and 8. This dashed Alexandra's momentary hope, but according to Officer Davis, the mystery is solved. Alexandra shook her head firmly, saying, "You don't know that for certain. Please, couldn't someone go and find out?" Officer Davis glanced around the room before speaking to Mrs. Hamilton. "Your daughters went missing in Queensland, thousands of kilometers away. It's highly unlikely that," she said, her voice quivering. "Please," Alexandra interjected, her voice breaking. "I've been searching for 8 months. What's one more check?" Ben stepped forward. "Alexandra, I understand how you feel, but no, you don't understand," she said, turning to face him. "You can't possibly understand what it's like to lose your children, to witness their disappearance, to hear their cries for helpless as they cries out." Concerned about their well-being, the room fell silent. Even Officer Davis appeared uneasy. Ben proposed a solution: send officers to the island to conduct a thorough search and inquire about the whereabouts of Casey and Chloe. Officer Davis sighed but reluctantly nodded. "I suppose we could arrange that." As a whisper, Alexandra expressed her gratitude, relief coursing through her. Ben instructed her to wait outside with Robert, softly. "I need to talk to the officers about the logistics." With a strange mix of emotions, Alexandra nodded and followed Robert out of the room. As they walked out, she could hear Ben's voice becoming more authoritative as he started to coordinate with the local authorities. "I apologize if I aroused your hopes," Robert said as they stood outside the security lodge. The midday sun was directly overhead, casting short shadows on the sandy ground. Alexandra shook her head in disapproval. "Stop apologizing." Ben and 2 uniformed officers, who seemed to be locals with weathered skin and a laid-back attitude, came out of the door before Roger could answer. "Alexandra, we've arranged for these officers to visit Middle Island. They know the owners better than I do, so it should be easier," Ben explained. The taller officer nodded toward Alexandra, and the 2 of them seemed to be heading toward the beach. Robert offered to take them in his seaplane instead of the boat because it would be faster. Ben thought about it and nodded. That would be helpful. Alexandra watched the officers closely, wanting to go along too but knowing they wouldn't let her. Before boarding the seaplane, Roger approached her and gave her a business card with the words, "Here's my number. In case you need to reach me or if you hear anything new." Alexandra accepted the card and gave it to Robert, exchanged her personal contact information with him. A solemn expression spread across Robert's face as he nodded in agreement. "Thank you for everything, Robert." Not many people would have stopped to help. Robert, the two officers, and Alexandra and Ben stood shoulder to shoulder on the beach as they boarded the water aircraft. Ben said, "I hope it turns out well. I'll call you as soon as we learn anything." As the engine roared to life, the plane skimmed the lake and then soared into the sky, gradually fading from sight as it grew smaller and smaller. To which Ben responded, "Now we wait," before shifting his attention to glancing at Alexandra again. Subtly, he scowled. Alexandra couldn't recall the last time she had a good night's sleep, but she noticed that her friend looked fatigued. During those months of looking, the days had become hazy. "I'm fine," she adamantly stated. "No, you're not," Ben reassured her sweetly. "I have an apartment reservation for you not far away. You need to get some sleep as we wait for the news." Alexandra began to object, but then she remembered how exhausted she actually was. She did admit that perhaps you're correct. Ben took them to a modest apartment complex with 2 stories approximately 15 minutes from the shore. The town's main street was lined with modest stores and cafes, adding to its quaintness. In the middle of the day, not many ventured out. While Alexandra waited at the front desk, Ben processed check-ins. She couldn't stop thinking about the island and what the police officers could find there. Imagine if they saw her daughters, would they know who they were? How diligently would they search? The inquiries swarmed her thoughts like ravenous vultures. "Room 204, Ben informed her as he passed her a key. "I will return whenever we receive a response from the police. See if you can get some sleep in there while that is happening." With a nod, Alexandra accepted the key. To Ben, "I am eternally grateful." According to his expression, "It's more than just my job," that's what he said. "Send a message if anything comes up." After entering the apartment, Alexandra placed her luggage on the floor and surveyed the modest room. With an open door leading to a bedroom, a kitchenette, and a cozy living space, it was spotless and inviting. On the table where she had set the missing children posters, she could still see the happy smiles of Casey and Chloe. The room's confines. As she remained still. A sound so loud it echoes. When her daughters could be so near, how could she possibly relax? It was intolerable to think that she would have to sit in this cramped room and do nothing while others looked for her children. The stack of posters and Alexandra's handbag were both seized. Take a break if you need to. She needed to get things done, put up signs, and meet with people. Maybe one of the residents of this sleepy town had seen anything or knew something. She was too busy to waste any chance. Not at a time when her girls could be across the water. She locked the door behind her as she departed from the flat, her resolve rekindled. As Alexandra painstakingly glued posters to lampposts, storefront windows, and community bulletin boards, the stack of posters she had brought to the sleepy seaside village began to dwindle. A mother's wordless cry for aid, each billboard spoke volumes. Due to the oppressive heat of the day, few people ventured out into the town. When she inquired as to whether they had seen her girls, the few she did meet nodded their heads in sympathy but otherwise showed no response. Their generosity was heartfelt, but it failed to alleviate her mounting uneasiness. A little park emerged from the town center, sun-drenched chairs and a playground lying empty. As she walked up to a light pole close to the park's entrance, Alexandra started taping a poster that she had taken from a store owner. "Are those your children?" someone questioned from behind her. An old man was observing Alexandra as she worked. A thick tan on his thin, wrinkled skin betrayed years spent in nature. Clean, well-worn khakis and a faded blue button-up shirt comprised his attire. Alexandra answered, yes, as she rounded out the poster's corners. As the man inched closer to the photos, he squinted and said, "My daughters, they've been missing for 8 months now." "Thought so. They look familiar." Alexandra's heart skipped a beat, but she kept her joy bottled up because she'd had her fair share of unrealistic expectations. "Guess what? Got a glimpse of them?" He cocked his head to examine the pictures. "Possibly yes. I am unable to swear by it." He made an oblique motion toward the water. "Look, I'm only a fisherman. Had one my whole life. Recalls faces, even the smallest ones." Alexandra pleaded, her voice barely audible, to be calm. "The more detail you can provide regarding your encounters with them, the better." The man's chin was scratched in serious contemplation. "It happened not long ago on a morning. I planned to leave early, before the light came up. Observed a boat making its way toward Middle Island. 2 little girls were on the deck." An abrupt dizziness struck Alexandra. "Is that Middle Island?" "I agree with that. Owned by the wealthy." Remained fairly silent. As he persisted in studying the poster, the man's pupils constricted. "Now that I've looked at these pictures again, I think the girls I saw were very similar. I must admit, I am not really certain. From a distance, children of that age can appear to be very similar." "When did you see them?" Alexandra asked with a grave tone. "A few months ago, I would say. I can't be more specific, but I am familiar with the ocean, and I have vivid memories," Alexandra said, reaching for her phone. "I must inform the authorities regarding this. Would you be open to talking to them?" The elderly guy drew back, his expression turning suspicious. "No phones, no police. Me and the authorities don't get along so well." "Please, they're my daughters," asked Alexandra. The man's head was forcibly shook. He looked around as if to see whether anyone was seeing them, then continued, "I've said what I've seen. That's all I can do." Alexandra was about to reply when she heard, "If you ever need to find me again, just ask for Micah's lodge near the north end of the beach. That's where I stay." Meanwhile, his voice was low as he warned, "Don't trust everyone around here, Mrs. Not everyone's what they seem." With that cryptic warning, he turned and went away, his steps deliberate but nonetheless unhurried. As her thoughts raced, Alexandra slumped onto a bench close by. Someone else asserted that they had seen girls on Middle Island who looked like her daughters. Can it be that it's just a coincidence? She was about to dial Ben's number when she felt the phone start to ring, so she put it down. The screen briefly displayed Ben's name. Without hesitation, she responded. "Are they, Ben? Discover anything?" "Just now, the cops got back from the island." Ben spoke in a methodical manner. "Highly competent. They verified the kids with the parents. Casey and Chloe aren't the only daughters, there are others." "Alexandra, I apologize." She felt a loss of the optimism that had been growing up inside her. "Can you trust them? Were they very thorough?" "Yes. Everybody on the island was interviewed by the police. The kids there are most certainly not your daughters, and nobody has ever laid eyes on them. It's all starting over again." Her eyes were shut by Alexandra, thinking about all of this data in addition to what the fisherman had told her. It didn't seem right. She stated with conviction that she wanted to speak with the police officers face to face. A sigh escaped Ben's lips. "I know you're frustrated, Alexandra, but it won't make a difference. Our quest must now shift to other areas. Our next stop will be in a different place tomorrow." "But the cops have said it wasn't your girls," Ben gently cut in. "While we're here, I've arranged for the local police to keep searching the area. It's top-notch utilization of our current assets." As she pondered the fisherman's caution, Alexandra grew quiet. People should not be trusted. Give me an explanation for why he would say that. Also, why did 2 different people say they saw females on the island who looked like her daughters but the police didn't find anything suspicious? "Alex, are you still in that room?" She finally responded with a yes. I agree with you. Our search needs to be redirected. Pretty soon after that, the talk ceased, but Alexandra stayed on the seat, looking at the picture of her girls. She could feel her gut telling her that something was obviously wrong. His warning remained with her, and the fisherman had been sincere in his assessment of the situation. Out of nowhere, she got to her feet. Because the correct questions were not asked, her daughters had already been gone for 8 months. Nobody had looked in the correct places. Even if they were so near, she would not allow it to happen again. Near the park entrance, Alexandra quickly made her way to an empty taxi. A smiling middle-aged man, the driver glanced up as she headed in that direction. Slide into the back seat, and she requested, "Can you take me to Micah's lodge?" The location is said to be along the northern shore of the beach. Micah's place? Absolutely, the driver responded, revving up the engine. Old fisherman's hut. Been there forever. The cab meandered through the narrow streets until it made a U-turn into a route that hugged the coastline. A dirt route replaced the paved road after approximately 10 minutes, and Alexandra could make out a few dilapidated wooden buildings up ahead. An explanation from the driver was that it was a fishing place. Alex paid the fare and stepped out onto the sandy area, where she saw Micah's is the third hut along. As tiny boats docked at the coast, the aroma of fish and salt wafted into the air. Nets were drying on wooden racks. A small group of men labored in silence, fixing tools or organizing their haul. With each step, her shoes dug a little deeper into the sand as she walked toward the third cottage. Walls that had been exposed to the elements for years had faded to a silvery gray, yet the tiny but solid building inside was. The components. A number of fishing implements were strung from outside hooks. Seated on a wooden crate, the elderly man she'd encountered in the park was meticulously polishing a set of lures. As his shadow fell onto her, he raised his eyes to look up. "Then you found me," he said plainly, putting down his work. Alexa spoke without introduction because she needed additional information about what you witnessed. "And by not trusting everyone, you meant exactly that." To make sure no one was nearby, the man cast a quick glance about. "A name, Justin," he finally said. "Micah. Had been my dad." Had the lines and wrinkles on Justin's face become even more pronounced? "Now he's departed. He was unjustly incarcerated by the police. Claimed he was fishing at an area too near to Middle Island while affluent people were in town. Invented tales that led to his incarceration." He spoke with a quieter voice. "There he passed away. Beaten by fellow prisoners." A sympathetic look crossed Alexander's face. "Sorry to hear about your dad." Even though Justin's eyes betrayed his suffering, he shrugged nonetheless. "This has been going on for a long time, but it still makes me distrust the local authority. It concerns the island and the people who possess it. Tell me everything you know about them." "The island's owners," Alexandra inquired. "Wealthy urbanites have been coming here for generations," Justin said, reaching for a lure he turned in his fingers. "It used to be just them coming, bringing their friends, throwing parties. But now I see children coming and going, just like their own children." Justin locked eyes with her. "That's what everyone says. Their daughters, their sons, their friends, kids. I've spent my entire life observing that island, and something changed. The kids there are so unique, I've never seen the same ones twice." Alexandra felt a shiver go down her spine despite the balmy afternoon. "Are you saying they're abducting children?" Justin avoided answering directly. "Nothing surprises me anymore in this wicked world." He placed the lure with care. "When you asked about your daughters and brought up the pilot who saw girls on the island who looked similar." Justin stood up abruptly and challenged Alexandra. "You believe these people after 2 people told you they saw girls who fit your daughter's description?" Alexandra hesitated. "I don't know what to believe anymore." "Come with me," Justin said, her words tinged with scorn. The police had allegedly gone to check on the property and claimed the children were the owners. He made his way to the rear of his shack, where a set of powerful binoculars dangled on a hook. Alexander was given them by him as he gestured toward the horizon. She said, "Look there." Alexandra adjusted the binoculars so that the faraway waves were in sharp focus. Justin had pointed out a magnificent yacht gliding over the sea, and after a brief check, she saw it too. Justin told me to zoom in closer. Alexandra refocused the binoculars, this time narrowing her field of view to the ship. Upon spotting figures on the deck, her heart nearly stopped. Two diminutive people, standing close to the railing, and a number of men in casual attire. Her voice was captured in her neck. "Is that my daughter or daughters? Those two are Chloe and Casey." After 8 long months apart, she finally got to see her children through the binoculars, and her palms quivered with joy. "Seems like your daughters are coming back to the main island along with their captives," he stated with grimness. "My question is, what are your plans to address this?" Alexandra asked, her thoughts racing as she dropped the binoculars. She glanced at Justin for a moment before continuing, "I need to call Ben and Roger. I am truly grateful." The thought of ever. There were no taxis in this remote area, so Alexandra was alone with the urgent need to act quickly. She reached for her phone. Her first instinct was to call Ben, but a moment of hesitation stopped her. The old fisherman waved off her thanks. "No payment needed. Just make sure those men end up behind bars where they belong." His eyes hardened. "That will be payment enough." The sky had started to darken as Alexandra left Justin's lodge, the sunset painting the horizon in brilliant hues of orange and purple. As Alexandra searched through her contacts, she came across Roger's number. Unlike Justin, who had implied that the local authorities were involved, Robert had no connection to the local police. With her heart racing, she dialed Roger's number and waited for him to answer. After 3 rings, Robert's voice came through. "Robert, I need your help," Alexandra said urgently. "I just beheld my girls setting sail for the main island aboard a boat." Robert responded with a similarly eager voice, "That's incredible timing. I was about to call you. I'm certain it's them. A yacht is making its way towards the mainland from One Arm Point Airport, where I am. According to the pictures, 2 of the young ladies on board are strikingly similar to your daughters." Alexandra felt her heart race. "Just where are they going? Are you aware?" "On their way to the private marina north of town. They appear to be heading north." "No, I would prefer to not see them. I have no idea what they do once they dock if I depart now." Quickly, Alexandra decided to remain there. "Maintain vigilance over them. I'll contact Ben and arrange for him to meet you at the location with the police." "Sound strategy. I'll make sure to keep you informed if anything changes." Immediately after hanging up, Alexandra dialed Ben's number. She needed his assistance regardless of her residual uncertainties. Both his might and her resources were lacking in her situation. "Alexandra," Ben quickly responded. She responded to the question, "Is everything okay?" by saying, "I found my daughters," without introductory speech. "They're on a yacht heading to the main island right now. Robert can see them from the airport, and I saw them through binoculars from the fisherman's lodge." "Wait, slow down," Ben said. "What fisherman? At what point did you become aware of this?" Alexandra quickly explained about meeting Justin and what he had told her, including his suspicions about the Middle Island owners and the local authorities. "That's a serious claim," Ben said, his tone careful. "Where are you now?" The address Alexandra gave him was close to. "Stay put. I'll come get you in 10 minutes. Don't talk to anyone else about this." Alexandra paced nervously, keeping her phone charged in case Roger called with an update. True to his word, Ben's car showed up within minutes, kicking up dust as it came to a stop at Justin's lodge. "Ben, I know how this sounds, but I'm certain it's them. 2 people have seen girls matching their description, and now I've seen them with my own eyes." The line went silent for a brief moment, side by side with her. "Please, enter," he commanded, bending down to unlock the passenger door. As soon as you enter, Alexandra snapped back to him. We must not delay. Tell me exactly what Justin told you, Ben asked seriously as he shifted into drive. They could disappear again. Alexandra recounted the entire conversation as they drove, including Justin's warning against trusting the authorities and his assertion that children frequently appeared on the island before vanishing. If what he's saying is true, then. Indeed, Ben stated with caution, and we must exercise utmost caution if the local authorities are in any way complicit in protecting these individuals. Ben nodded. I see. Before we go any further, I want to know if you're sure those girls you saw were your daughters. This is risky territory we're entering. Alexandra met his stare steadily. I saw them, Ben. A mother, she continued, I don't care how big it is. I just want Casey and Chloe back. Ben studied her expression intently before nodding. All right, here's our plan. He tapped his earpiece and said, I'm going to call Rocket back and get a current location. Then I'll coordinate with my team from Queensland, those who had come with us here, not the local officers. We'll approach this from two angles to make sure they can't escape. Alexandra watched her brother make the call, putting it on speaker so she could hear. Robert, it's Ben. I'm with Alexandra. What's your current location? They're still on track, Robert. They're heading towards the beach coast. They must be leaving the island after the officers questioned them earlier. Ben's face turned dark. Could you confirm your exact coordinates? Ben inputted the information into his car's GPS as Robert relayed it. I'll reach out to my team and the local authority. If the authorities are corrupt, they might inform the men, so they change their course and go back to the island. Can you reach your sea plane? It's heading there, Robert confirmed. If they attempt to return to Middle Island, I can intercept them from above. Great. Stay on this line with Alexandra. I have to make another call. Ben gave Alexandra the phone and quickly dialed a number. Alexandra gripped the phone tightly. Roger, can you see my daughters? Yes, they seem to be. Hold on, they're being taken below now. I think they're getting ready to land. Ben ended the call and turned to face Alexandra. Alexandra, my team is in position and I've informed the local authorities about everything you told me. We'll approach from the south while my team moves in from the north. If those men get tipped off, we know it must be the police and they would head back to the water. Robert can track them from the air. We'll have them surrounded. Feeling a mix of fear and determination, Alexandra nodded. What about the local police if they're involved? Ben grimaced. I just called the state police commissioner directly, he responded. We are about to find out if the local authorities are corrupt. Ben's radio suddenly cracked open. Officer Hansen, this is dispatch. We have received reports of suspicious activity at Holo Beach. Please confirm your position. Ben glanced at Alexandra before responding, this is Hansen. I'm en route to Holo Beach now with Mrs. Hamilton. ETA 5 minutes. Copy that. Local units have also been dispatched. Ben turned off the radio and cranked up his speed. Now we'll see whose loyalties lie. Ben's car pulled up to Hugo Beach as dusk descended. He parked on a rise above the shoreline, giving them a good view while keeping a safe distance. Looking through his binoculars, Ben noticed a black luxury SUV waiting near the water's edge. There, he handed Alexandra the binoculars and said, the yacht is approaching that section of beach. Look at the figures disembarking from the smaller boat. Alexandra fiddled with the focus, her hands quivering slightly, but she confirmed that she could see them. Alexandra whispered, her voice catching, they've drugged my babies. Ben lowered the binoculars, his expression grim. If those really are your daughters, this confirms they've been kidnapped. No parent would drug their own children like that. This led Alexandra to believe that the girls were being carried by one of the men. Ben returned the binoculars and focused intently, insisted, grabbing for the door handle. Ben restrained her arm and said, wait, we have to see how this plays out first. Look, The local police are coming. Watching through the binoculars, they saw two uniformed officers come out of the security lodge they had visited earlier in the day. The officers approached the men, who seemed agitated at first. "There's an argument happening," Ben narrated, continuing to watch. "The fat one is gesturing angrily at the officers." Alexandra was gasping for air. While she patiently waited, Alexandra voiced her disbelief, asking, "What's happening now?" Ben swiftly pulled out his phone and started recording through the binoculars. "Envelopes, probably money. They're bribing them." Ben's voice was tight with controlled anger. "No effort is being made to conceal it." Local police stood watch to make sure nobody got in the way as the men took the unconscious girls back to the yacht. "They're starting to," frantically exclaimed Alexandra. Benjamin responded, "Not yet," while continuing to record, to the statement, "We have to stop them." "Robert, what's your status?" The quick response echoed through the air. "I can see the yacht. It's leaving the shore now. My team is in position near your landing area," Ben confirmed. "Wait for my signal, then intercept." Alexandra gripped the dashboard with white-knuckled fingers, worried about what might happen if Robert wasn't in position. With a comforting touch, Ben put his hand on her shoulder and reassured her that the girls would be okay. "These men want the girls alive. That's why they've kept them all these months. Trust me, Alexandra, we're going to get them back." They waited in nervous silence as the yacht swung out to sea again. Ben kept peering through the binoculars, occasionally updating Alexandra on what he could see. "The yacht is about half a kilometer out now," he finally announced. "Time to move." He spoke into his earpiece again. "Units, please advance. Robert, you are now cleared to intercept." Looking through the binoculars, Alexandra could make out the far outline of a seaplane descending swiftly, touching down on the water with a splat of white foam. "It's happening," Ben exclaimed, starting the car. "We're going to intercept the corrupt officers." He sped down to the shore, stopping not far from where the other local officers stood. The men's expressions turned startled as Ben's car drew near. "What's the game plan?" "This evidence is irrefutable," Ben stated simply, "so I'm going to arrest them." Alexandra inquired with a hint of nervousness. "Just keep an eye on the waves from where you are." Alexandra nodded, her gaze locked onto the faraway scene playing out on the water. Through the binoculars, she could make out Roger's seaplane, blocking the yacht's path. From a speedboat that had materialized from out of nowhere, small figures, presumably Ben's team, were boarding the yacht. "They're surrounding them," she whispered to herself. Please let my girls be safe." Alexandra followed the unfolding drama on the water through the binoculars. Ben's team officers boarded the yacht with their weapons drawn. One of the bodyguards tried to jump overboard, but a shot rang out, likely aimed at his leg, preventing him from escaping. The remaining men raised their hands in surrender. On the beach, Ben approached the local officers with purpose in his stride. She was unable to hear the words being spoken, but she could see the look of bewilderment and fear on their faces as Ben withdrew handcuffs. One of the officers attempted to withdraw by reaching for his holster, but Ben was quicker. In a matter of moments, both of the local officers were handcuffed, their expressions turning to shock as Ben searched their pockets and produced the envelopes they had received earlier, which he held up as evidence. Alexandra's gaze shifted back to the water, where she could see officers escorting the men onto a police boat that had materialized just ahead. Her heart raced as she watched two tiny figures being gently hoisted onto Roger's seaplane alongside the yacht. "Casey, Chloe," she whispered, but no one could hear her because they were so far away. To let her know it was okay to come out, Ben waved toward the automobile. After quickly grabbing the doorknob, Alexandra hurried over the sand to meet him. Per Ben's confirmation, "They've got them." She drew near. "They are being brought to shore by Robert, and paramedics are en route." One of the detained officers shook his head in surprise, and the others were shocked. He spoke to Ben and said, "You don't understand, this community benefits monetarily from their families. Our schools and infrastructure receive their self-sacrificed support. This town wouldn't survive without them. So you turned a blind eye when they abducted youngsters." Resentment coursed through Ben's voice. As the other officer raised concerns, we were unaware of any abduction. They claimed the kids were either theirs or friends. There was no cause for us to doubt it. Save it for the interrogation, Ben replied, handing them over to two officers from his team who had arrived in another vehicle. Alexandra barely registered this exchange, her eyes fixed on the water where Robert's seaplane was taxiing toward shore. The police boat carrying the arrested men was also approaching, the suspects surrounded by armed officers. What happens now? The suspects are taken to the main police station in town, not the local outpost, she asked Ben. The females will undergo analysis by doctors and nurses before being returned to you. Beside her shoulder, Ben extended a hand. Alexandra, it's nearly over. The first to be taken ashore were the passengers of the yacht. Based on her observations via the binoculars, Alexandra identified the stocky man and his towering partner. While being led to waiting police vans, they were guarded by multiple handcuffed bodyguards who avoided making eye contact. Finally, after 8 excruciating months of waiting, Alexandra's moment had arrived. Robert flew his seaplane to its. On their way to the beach, and when the door swung open, she beheld him step out, trailed by 2 officers with diminutive, motionless bodies. With her pulse racing, Alexandra sprinted ahead. My name is Chloe Casey. It became very clear to Alexandra that these were her daughters when the police officers drew near. She could still tell they were her children even though they had slimmer faces and longer hair than she remembered. She strained to touch Casey's cheek and said, "Are they okay?" in a panic. To what end are they dormant? Rise to the occasion. It seems like they were sedated, a police officer remarked delicately. The paramedics are here to check them over. Sure enough, an ambulance had shown there, its lights beeping as it parked alongside the shore. Rushing over with a stretcher, 2 paramedics arrived. According to the lead paramedic, after a brief evaluation, it is necessary to transport them to the hospital. Even though their vital signs are steady, we still need to keep an eye on them until the sedative wears off. Nodding, Alexandra kept her gaze fixed on her daughters as they were painstakingly transferred to stretchers before being transported into the ambulance. She announced her intention to accompany them and began making her way toward the car. With care, Ben took her arm. Please, Alexandra, be at the station before anything else. The case against these men relies heavily on your statement. He locked eyes with her. I assure you, your daughters will be well taken care of. The effects of the sedative will not kick in for several hours. You can still be present when they awaken and deliver your statement. Being conflicted about whether to remain with her daughters or make sure the perpetrators of their abduction are held accountable. Ben subtly mentioned that these men have experience with this. And they will repeat the act unless we intervene. Other children could be saved by your testimony. The paramedics were getting ready to shut the ambulance doors as Alexandra glanced at her girls for the final time. She instructed the paramedics to attend to the patients. As quickly as possible, I will be there. Nodding, the chief paramedic spoke. Rest assured, they will be protected. My word is with you. Alexandra looked to Ben with a new sense of purpose as the ambulance drove away. We should go. What these men have done is wrong, and they must pay the price. The little coastal outpost they had visited earlier stood in sharp contrast to the town's major police station. The building has all the hallmarks of an official police station, including private interrogation rooms and safe-holding cells. Detective Lou, a female cop with sympathetic eyes, escorted Alexandra to one of these rooms. As she got ready to take Alexandra's statement, the investigator acted in a meticulous and careful manner. I get that this has been really tough. First thing in the morning, Detective Lou installed a recording device. However, I kindly request that you explain to me everything in detail, beginning with your initial encounter with Roger Martin. With a nod, Alexandra gathered her thoughts. She began by describing her morning run-in with Roger on the beach, then her chat with the local officials, and finally her meeting with Justin, the fisherman, who let her see her girls through his binoculars. Detective Lu took notes while she talked, occasionally asking for clarification, but largely letting Alexandra finish her tale without interruption. The detective stopped the tape as soon as she concluded. "Yours faithfully, Alexandra." "That is really useful." Detective Lu's normally composed attitude became a little more relaxed. "Please be informed that we have been conducting separate interviews with the suspects and are already in the process of constructing a strong case, sir." "So, what's new for you?" Leaning forward with apprehension, Alexander inquired. "To a greater extent than their bosses, the bodyguards have spoken freely. As Detective Lu put it, based on their claims, this operation extends beyond your girls. They have acknowledged the abduction of other children throughout the years." Alexandra felt nauseous. "For how many?" "There have been at least a dozen in the last several years, while we do not yet have an exact figure. Others were taken to the island for what they referred to as weekend excursions, while some were held at their mansion outside of Broome." The investigator's countenance grew gloomy. "What these men did with the kids while they were in their care is unknown to us. In light of Based on the information we have, we can only assume the worst about the suspects and their backgrounds, but we will need to conduct additional tests to corroborate this." Her voice grew quiet as she waited. "From what we can gather, it appears that associates overseas purchased the older children as they reached a specific age." Alexandra was nauseous. As she covered her mouth to murmur, "My God, are you telling me these men with my children?" She couldn't bring herself to finish the terrible question, and the local police knew about this all along. There were a few of them, encouraged to turn a blind eye by posing as friends or relatives of the children. As a sign of her contempt, Detective Lu shook her head. "Particularly in tiny, isolated towns that rely on affluent clients, corruption can flourish due to the availability of money and influence." As she took this information in, Alexander's palms quivered a little. "Are the other children going to be easy to locate?" "Return with them to your residence. International agencies are already working with us in a coordinated fashion. Given the enormity of this, it will progress to the federal court system." As a comforting touch, Detective Lu extended a hand, held aloft by Alexandra. "What fortunate daughters you have. Without your doggedness, we would never have located these children, some of whom have been lost for years. Is there sufficient proof?" In a fretful tone, Alexandra inquired. "They appear to be powerful men. What if they try to evade the law by leveraging their wealth and connections? We have a strong case thanks to the physical evidence, the confessions we are collecting, and the testimony of witnesses such as Roger, Justin, and yourself. You can only go so far in this country with a lot of money and power, particularly for situations concerning the exploitation of children." Detective Lu's countenance betrayed his resolve. "We intend to see this through to the end, even though the legal process will be lengthy." A burden was lifted off Alexandra's shoulders as she nodded. Justice was finally within reach after 8 months of frantic searching. "Oh, and the officers that were bribed, huh? Are they also going to be charged?" "Sure thing. The entire coastal station is already under investigation by Internal Affairs. All officers will be interrogated, and those responsible will face legal consequences." Identified individual's voice dried out. "Internal corruption is something that we take extremely seriously." Alexandra was eventually cleared to leave after signing her statement and answering a few additional questions. Roger had already waited outside the interview room when she arrived. His words were as simple, "I wanted to make sure you were okay," as he stood there, sensing her approach. With sincere appreciation, Alexandra responded, "Thank you." She went on to offer a transport to the hospital if she felt the need. "According to Robert, for everything. If you hadn't spotted my daughters from your plane this morning," he then shook his head negative. "Well, I'm merely pleased that I was able to be of assistance. I will be unable to fly for at least a day or two, as the police informed me that their jet is currently undergoing evidence processing. Regardless, Ben emerged from a different hallway, appearing exhausted but content. "Alex, this is over. You can be taken to the hospital right away by one of my policemen." Alexandra did, in fact, glance over at Rogert. "If you could accompany me, it would be great. You played a role in the safe return of my girls. I would prefer it if you could be present when they awaken." Nodding, Robert seems taken aback. "That would mean a lot to me." A young officer was summoned by Ben, for transportation to the medical facility. Ben delicately patted Alexandra's arm as they got ready to depart. Though the legal actions lie ahead, the fact that Casey and Chloe are secure at this time is of utmost importance. "Alex, you accomplished it. You persevered and eventually located them." Her face contorted into a smile as tears welled up in her eyes. "Ben, I appreciate you having faith in me when nobody else did." After that, she and Robert set out, her spirits lifted for the first time in 8 long months as she looked forward to seeing her girls again. There was complete silence in the hospital hallway as Robert and Alexandra trailed behind the nurse to the room where Casey and Chloe had been transferred. A reunion that Alexandra had hoped would never happen, a moment she had fantasized about for 8 excruciating months, was drawing nearer with each stride. The nurse reassured them as they walked that they are both doing okay. They were administered a moderate sedative with the intention of keeping them tranquil rather than rendering them totally comatose. It's been around 20 minutes since they first woke up. Alexandra felt her pulse quicken as the nurse approached a door numbered 215 and paused. "They're within this very room. Do not rush, take your time." Alexandra pulled open the door with quivering hands. Casey and Chloe sat up in 2 little beds side by side, looking a little confused but aware, as afternoon sunlight streamed into the room via the windows. Nobody said a word or moved for a while. Next, Casey's recognition was immediately apparent. Shouting out, "Mommy!" Alexandra hurried over, embracing the 2 girls tightly as her eyes welled up with tears. "I had." Chloe's little arms encircled her mother's neck as she whimpered, "You found us, Mommy. I've missed you so much." She held her babies close, feeling their warmth and solidity as evidence that this wasn't a dream. "I searched the whole place," Alexandra told them, her voice trailing off as she drew back to examine their faces. Casey's eyes were the same deep brown, Chloe's hazel flecked with gold, and with longer hair and slightly sun-darkened skin, they appeared thinner than she remembered. "Country for you both." The nurse came back for a second to take their vital signs, and she confirmed that the girls were healthy and that the sedative effects had nearly worn off. Before she departed, Alexandra sat on the bed edge, with one daughter resting on each side of her. She couldn't help but touch them, assuring herself that they were indeed there. "This is Robert," she said, gesturing to where Robert stood silently by the door. "He helped find you." Robert approached him with a kind grin and said, "Hello." "He's a pilot." "That's right." Robert informed Casey, "I saw you both and recognized you from your mom's missing posters." After planting a kiss on the top of each girl's head, Alexandra finally asked the question that had been plaguing her, did they hurt you at all?" Casey's face lit up with recognition. "I remember. We saw your plane and waved really big, hoping you'd see us. Glad it worked." "They were kind to us," Chloe remarked, and the 2 females shook their heads in agreement. "They provided us with dolls and lovely clothing. According to Casey, they simply insisted that we act like their daughters. Everyone had to address them as uncle and follow their orders." Alexandra experienced a nuanced blend of relief and wrath. The fact that her daughters were unharmed was a relief. It was anger over the way these men had used them. In a dramatic turn of events, Casey announced, "We shouldn't have gone with them that day," her eyes gathering tears. "It was supposedly a surprise for you, but they informed us that they had a princess castle to show us." "We missed you every day," Chloe said, her small hand finding Alexandra's. "The uncle said you were on a trip and would come get us soon, but you never came. It wasn't your fault, my darling. They tricked you." "Adults shouldn't lie to children like that." Alexandra embraced her more tightly. I have never stopped searching for you. Not for a single day. What happens now, Mommy? Casey said. Do we go home? Yes, my darling. After a while, we understood they were lying. Alexandra removed a strand of hair off Chloe's face. Robert gently cleared his throat. I should probably give you all some time alone. I'm glad everything worked out. Alexandra looked up at him gratefully and said, Thank you again, Robert. This was the first time her eyes had a genuine smile in months. He shook his head, realizing that their reunion was compensation enough, and said, Take care of each other. He then smiled one more time at the girls before leaving. In the room, he departed. Under the warm afternoon sun, Alexandra sat with her daughters, answering their innocent questions about home and the future. They would have further specialist appointments, therapy to help them cope with their trauma, and a lengthy legal process to come. However, at this very moment, it didn't matter. What mattered was that Casey and Chloe were safe, despite the overwhelming odds, despite the diminishing hope of law enforcement and time, which usually made the odds of locating abducted children alive look bleaker. They had overcome the odds. They were returning home. I love you two so much, Alexandra exclaimed, her voice betraying her deep emotions. With Casey and Chloe cuddled up to her, their little bodies warm and full of life and wonder, Alexandra thought about the ordeal that had taken them to this point. And I promise we're going to be okay. It may have required a little luck, some unfaltering resolve, and the generosity of total strangers. As they soar low above the island, a pilot. Just when it mattered most. A fisherman who keeps excellent records and uses a telescope. An officer who is prepared to trust his gut rather than follow procedures. At other times, she understood that love could triumph over insurmountable obstacles. The difference between losing and winning again was sometimes as simple as refusing to give up. And there were instances when hope was warranted, even in the depths of despair. Then again,